Alrighty.
Hi, hi everybody. My name is Hereth. I'm glad everybody's here. Uh, the what we're going to be talking about today is gang times. Luann, I just got the little message that my internet is unstable again. If you notice that I'm glitchy or anything, can you let me know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so here I am. I have been a counselor for about a decade, primarily working in social services with women and families. I've been a foster home licensor for a number of years, as well as a foster parent myself, and then I have three kids of my own. Um, and my experience is part of the terrain in fostering and parenting to face difficult times and to struggle to know what to do when this happens. And I hope today to gain some ideas for how to help when this happens. So I know that the audience we have here, we do have some really specific stressors and stress that just comes with a part of your role. And so I'm hoping to really give you some concrete things you can do to come up with a plan for that. So I first want to explore these questions, and I really would love as much interaction and engagement as you guys would like to give. You can either raise your hand and Luann can unmute you and you can speak, or you can put it in the chat, but as much conversation as you're willing to contribute, I would love to hear. So the first question I want to explore is what constitutes a difficult time? If someone says, I'm having a really hard time, what does that mean? If you have thoughts on that, I'd like to hear it. Um, and who gets a say? Who gets to say if you're having a difficult time? And how do we measure what it means when someone's having a difficult time? And the answer to this is there's no concrete answer. It's different for every person. It's based on a lot of different circumstances. What someone can tolerate without a lot of stressful emotions at one time, maybe down the road they can't tolerate as well because there's a lot of other external environmental factors compounding things. What one person can tolerate well, maybe another can't, because maybe one person was taught a lot of coping strategies and another person wasn't. So there's a lot of factors that really contribute towards what, who and what decides if it's difficult and if something's difficult for you. Um, and who gets to say? I think this is important to think about in kinship care and foster care because it can be very normalized, these really stressful cases, this trauma that the kids are coming out of, the trauma they've been exposed to. It's very normalized in this industry. And yet only we can say if something is stressful for us or difficult for us. A lot of that may have to do with how many kids you've had in your home, if it's your first, if it's your 100th, if you were close to adopting, if you're never, there's a lot of different factors that play a role. And there's really no one, especially in this industry, that can tell you if it's difficult for you or not. Only you know that. And so then how do we measure? How do we measure if something's difficult for us? How do we know how and if something is impacting us? And we're going to be getting into that. Luann, I can't see if there's any chat messages. Do you see any?
Nope, there aren't. I'll
Okay,
interrupt you if there are any.
okay, thanks. So we're going to first look at what we call somatic symptoms. So these are clues that our body gives us to let us know it's like, hey, things feel really stressful and hard for me right now, or things are at least starting to feel stressful and hard for me right now. So these are somatic symptoms or physical sensations that are clues to emotions that are going on in our body. So some examples of a somatic response to emotions can be, and specifically the more stressful, difficult emotions, can be muscle tightness, really common areas to have that tension. It's going to be in the neck, the shoulders, the lower back. A lot of people also feel it in their jaw from like clenching their teeth. Some people will also feel like stomach ache, nausea. That's a really common one for kids, especially when they don't know how to express their emotions yet. They'll have just that tummy ache because they're upset about something. Or it can also, another way to describe that is maybe having butterflies in the stomach, when people get sweaty palms, when their heart starts to feel like it's beating really fast, a racing heart, feeling cold and shivering. I know for me that's one where I'm really dysregulated, as I will feel really cold. Feeling just overly tired, restlessness, just and also agitation, and then change in sleep patterns. For some people, they're sleeping more. For other people, they're sleeping less. Some people have a hard time falling asleep. Some people fall asleep fine, but they have a hard time staying asleep or just waking a lot throughout the night.
In the chat,
What
Janet says that her heart feels like it's doing flip-flops when she gets really stressed.
flip-flops? That's a good way to describe it. I love that one because it's so relatable for kids, for sure. Yeah, so what are some other things that you can think of that your body does to let you know, like, hey, we might not be okay here. We've got some big emotions going on. Or what are some things that you've heard kids say to indicate to you they maybe have some emotions going on based on what their body is telling them? Anyone think of any? There's like dozens more. Another one that can happen for some people is they'll get muscle twitching. That can happen from like magnesium deficiency, but for quite a few people that happens when they're under stress. So they'll just get like that eyebrow twitching or like a calf just kind of twitching. It's an indicator of stress. Also headaches. People can get tension headaches. I see someone put a comment down here. Someone's child will run as a part of the stress. Yeah, trying to really get that energy out that feels pent up inside. That's a great one, I think, as long as they're not putting themselves in danger. Yeah, so our body is definitely giving us clues and cues of when it's under stress. So we're going to actually look at a handout I have where we're going to look a little bit closer at that. And Luann's going to share these handouts with you in the chat section. So this is, a lot of people are familiar with the emotion wheel. This is a newer emotion wheel that has been expanded to include the somatic response to emotions. I love this wheel. I actually just purchased this for this presentation. So these are our root emotions: sad, disgust, anger, fear, surprise, happy. Most adults can identify like 6 emotions at the best or at the most. But we can get more specific with these root emotions. So we go out into these more expansive, specific degrees of anger, and then we start looking at what is that feeling like. So anger is a pretty familiar emotion for people. Can happen if you're feeling really hateful or resentful towards someone, and hot. I mean, I can identify with that sometimes if I'm really angry, like my face gets flooded, it might actually look physically red, and I'm just feeling like really, really hot, really like almost a panicky feeling. And then if you look over here at fear, that's the root emotion to these ones. And then here's those somatic symptoms that correlate with these emotions right here. So the tingling one is another one I've heard. I've heard kids often express that one actually, like their hands will get tingly or their face will get really tingly. So does anyone see any that are relatable for you or for kids that you've worked with or have in your home that maybe you did or didn't know was associated with a specific emotion? Maybe it's surprising to you.
I guess when I look at this, one of the things I feel is that maybe the symptom or the somatic response doesn't necessarily correlate with the feeling that I thought it did.
Mm,
So
okay.
that's kind of interesting.
Do you have a specific example you're thinking of?
Well, sometimes when I'm really mad, I feel frozen or tense, instead of afraid. And then sometimes I guess yeah, I mean, I'd have to look really, but like I just had that like immediate response where I was like, oh, interesting. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
probably a lot of emotions that get jumbled too. Like even as an adult, it's hard to sometimes properly identify them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So we can definitely feel more than one emotion at once. We're capable of feeling multiple emotions at once at humans. It's pretty incredible to me. So you had said when you're feeling mad, um, you're feeling frozen. So that's that when we have an emotion where to the point where we're flooded, we can have that fight or flight response where we're like, oh, we got to get out of here, or we can what's called fawn, which is where we're frozen. We're just totally frozen because we're so emotionally flooded. We can't get away from that situation or that emotion. So that is a little bit of an explanation of why you may be responding to that mad in that way. And then you had said, how did you describe how it felt in your body? You had said tense, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that correlates because like these are just ways of basically describing tension. When you're clenched, when you have a tight jaw, when you have a headache, which is from those muscles tensing up, these are definitely from that tension happening throughout the body. So, but then this is totally different, like someone just totally going limp. But that could be that fawn reaction where they're just totally like in that frozen mode and they can't react. Their body is flooded with emotion. So, yeah. And another thing to consider too is what I often see with kids is they don't, and adults too, like if we don't have that emotional intelligence yet, and we know only a basic number of emotions, how to label those, then we might be misidentifying cues from our body of like, oh, I thought this feeling meant I'm angry, but actually it means that um, I'm feeling abandoned. I have this feeling in my gut, not because I'm mad, but I actually feel abandonment. Or this reminds me of when I was abandoned and that made me angry that I was abandoned, but that root emotion is abandonment. Which actually, well, the root emotion is sad. So it's good to explore like what is the root of this? Like, you know what I mean? Rather than just going with that first thought of what the emotion is. So going back to the slides. Then the next thing we want to consider is when we are caregivers and we're involved with foster care, it is oftentimes a lot of perpetual stress, right? So it's important to identify what can that do to your body? It can cause chronic or can cause cardiac event, like increased likelihood of cardiac event. It can cause increased cortisol in the body, which is a hormone, a stress hormone. Um, that's what gives us that reaction of that fight, flight, or fawn. So it's a very important hormone, but if it's chronically being dumped, we can produce too much of it, and then that leads to weight gain, predominantly in the belly area. Other symptoms can include exhaustion, increased appetite, and a host of other symptoms. Chronic stress can also lead to hair loss. Chronic stress can lead to lower immune function. So if maybe you used to be around kids all the time and you never got sick and now you're noticing you're picking up every single germ, that could be a cue or a clue that your stress level is pretty high. It can impact sleep, which leads to a whole host of other health effects. But like I mentioned earlier, sleep disruption can be different for everyone. It can be can't fall asleep, or can fall asleep and can't stay asleep. It can look different. And then it can lead to or worse than mood disorder. So if you already have some type of mood disorder, it can perpetuate it, make it worse, like anxiety or depression. And then it can also cause some new ones to show up. Just gonna check the chat real quick. Oh, she shared that. Thank you. Okay. So like I've already mentioned, just trying to normalize that it's pretty typical in kinship care, foster care, that we're exposed to quite a bit of stress. It's not uncommon for there to be ongoing and even significant stress that comes with the case, which unfortunately can't be avoided. Having a plan for how to manage that before you feel overwhelmed can be the best approach for how to deal with that stress when it comes. So one thing to think about is when are you thinking more clearly? Are you thinking more clearly when you're in a calm place or when you're really upset with something? And think about kids too. When they're totally dysregulated, they're throwing a tantrum, they're just totally off the walls, upset about something, can they logically respond to your questions and come up with answers, or is that going to be better done at a neutral time in a neutral place? Oops. So the answer is we're going to do better when we're coming up with something at a neutral time, right? So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. So because we want to come up with this plan at a time when we're at a good baseline, we can think rationally, we can think logically, not when we're completely dysregulated. So here's some examples of when it's pretty standard and typical in our society to come up with a plan. So if someone's delivering a baby or even adopting a baby, there's a lot of things that go into that. You're coming up with what are your birthing tools for the birth plan example? Do you want medication intervention? Identifying what you don't want. What do you want to make sure the doctor talks to you about? What different labor positions do you want to make sure to remember? What do you want to make sure to have happen when the baby arrives? What are some affirmations or mantras that are helpful you want to remember? A lot of people will even pick out specific songs that are helpful. So this is a really specific plan, right? If you have a child with an IEP or 504, that's used in the schools. If a child needs accommodations for the 504, or if they need specialized instruction intervention, then that's for the IEP. But it's a very black and white, concrete, well laid out plan for the school team to know what's the plan for this kid when they're in school. And then another example of when we will use a plan is like a performance improvement plan in like at your job, at your place of employment. So there's usually identifying what is the problem, what is the goal, what's the action plan, what are the metrics, how are we going to measure progress, and then what are the consequences if you don't follow through with this plan. So we want to identify the exact same type of thing, a concrete, well laid out plan to support you when you are having times of stress. So I would love to hear if y'all have heard of the wellness wheel, but these are all the different areas of our life that we want to try to fill into to create balance. Thanks, Luann. When each of these areas aren't balanced, the wheel can start to feel wobbly, so we need to identify the areas that are off balance and then what resources we need to get that area balanced again. We want to have some resources to pull from in as many of those areas as we can to address as needed when we're having those difficult times. So I'm going to go through the different areas in a wellness wheel, and then we're going to talk about some more specifics for us personally. So in the emotion section, having a strong sense of self that supports your ability to recognize, share, and be kind to yourself as you experience a wide range of emotions. So that a piece of that is having emotional intelligence and emotional awareness, which is why it's helpful to know like what that somatic response feels like and what that means, what that's telling you, what information your body is trying to share with you. And then the next section for your wellness wheel is environmental. So being aware of the interactions between the environment, your community, and yourself, behaving in a way that cares for each of these things responsibly. And then financial. So that one's pretty obvious. Are you living within your means? Are you able to manage your finances and take care of your needs short-term and long-term? And then intellectual. As humans, we are geared towards being intellectual people and having thoughts and opinions about things. So what that looks like is being open to new ideas, being creative, thinking critically, and seeking out new challenges. And then occupational, whatever it is you do for work to make a living, seek to have a career that is interesting, enjoyable, meaningful, and that contributes to the larger society. And I just want to make sure to mention here, you know, what fits in here too is if there's a parent that is home full time, that's a very important occupation, your role in taking care of the home. And then our physical well-being, how well we're doing at taking care of our body for optimal health and functioning, how we're contributing to society, building personal relationships with others, handling conflict, and connecting to a positive social network in our communities. And then the last one is spiritual, finding meaning in life events, demonstrating individual purpose, and living a life that reflects your values and beliefs. A lot of times people think that spiritual immediately correlates with religion, and it doesn't. It can, but it's also a lot broader than that, and we'll give some examples of that. Before we get into examples of each of these, does anyone have any thoughts about the wellness wheel? Is it new to anyone or familiar for some? New to Janet. Okay, that's helpful to know. Thank you. I sometimes can assume people know things, so I really appreciate you sharing that. So, oh, Terry said new. I don't know if it's a male or female, sorry. New to Terry. Okay, that's super helpful to know. We're gonna deep dive into it. So, well, let me pull up the wheel that Luann shared with all of you before we get into this part. So as we're diving into each section, I want you all to be thinking about writing out what fits in each section for you personally and you specifically, thinking about when I'm having a difficult time, what thing do I want to plug into that section? What would be helpful from the examples I'm giving you? Trying to open it up and it's not letting me. Here we go. Okay, so here's a blank wellness wheel, and this is one of your handouts, and Luann included in the chat section. So again, as we're going through each section, be thinking about, like, if you can have a piece of paper next to you, which things are going to be helpful for you in each of these areas and writing them down, because when we're done here, I want you to have a plan. I want you to have a pretty good start of what your plan is going to look like so that when we're done, you can actually have something on paper that you can have to move forward with. So back to the slides. So in this first section, spiritual. So like I said, it can be connected to religion, but can also be a lot broader than that. So for some people, it is going to be going to church and prayer and things like that. Youth groups, small Bible studies, things like that. It can also be meditation, having affirmations, things that are just words that are really uplifting to you when you're having difficult times. You know, a great one for caregivers is things like, they're not going to act like this forever. I know that I'm a good parent. I know I'm doing the right thing, things like that. And then practicing mindfulness. So mindfulness is really focusing on exactly what's happening right in this very moment. A great way to connect with mindfulness is using your five senses. So thinking about, what am I smelling right now? I'm smelling the lotion I have on my hands. What am I hearing right now? I'm hearing the fan from my heater under my desk. What am I tasting right now? I'm tasting the gum that's in my mouth. What am I seeing right now? I'm seeing the computer screen in front of me. So by focusing on your five senses, it can help be very present with this moment, which is helpful when you have a lot of chaos going on and your mind is ruminating and spinning out and you're, you know, having a lot of anxiety, a lot of different thoughts. Having that intention of, I'm going to be mindful right now. I'm going to check in with my five senses to just try to slow your mind down. Another helpful one for a lot of people is connecting to nature. And that can look like just stepping outside. I don't know if any of you have the experience where you get to the ocean and you just feel happier. And the reason for that is because the ocean generates what's called negative ions. And there's more negative ions by the ocean than anywhere else in the world. And negative ions are things that produce dopamine in our brain, which is that happy feeling. Negative ions also eliminate free radicals in our body. They're really, really good for us. It immediately give us this boost. The opposite of that, positive ions, where you'll see the most of that is an environment like an office where there's zero light to the outside. It's cubicles, it's all overhead. What's that bright light? I forget what it's called. But like those really bright overhead lights, there's nothing natural or organic around you.
Fluorescent.
Yes, fluorescent. Thank you. Like, yeah, that makes a lot of people feel sick, actually. But so connecting to nature literally has this natural effect of just really calming our body down, our nervous system down, and for some can create a very spiritual effect. Another one is yoga, just the practice of yoga, prayer, like I mentioned earlier, and then having gratitude. So having a practice of gratitude can be really helpful to focus on what is going well, or what is there to be thankful, especially during difficult times, because it can feel like everything's going wrong, nothing's going right, you know, having that very negative mindset. So having an intention of gratitude as a part of your spiritual section of your wheel can be helpful. And I would encourage you to actually write down some things that you know would be helpful for you to be thinking about. What are you grateful for? Are you grateful for having a mentor? Are you grateful for having a partner's help? Are you grateful for having your health? Like, what are the very specific things that would help you think about having gratitude for? Because in those moments, remember we talked earlier about, can you think rationally when you're heightened and elevated or when you're calm? So we're trying to come up with a plan right now when we're calm, prompting yourself for that time when you're dysregulated about what you can think of to be grateful for. And as I'm going, please share any other ideas that you can think of. There can be dozens and dozens of things in each of these sections. I just put a couple to give you some ideas. So, but if you think of other things, I'm sure everyone would benefit from hearing them. So then the next section is social. So joining a group that helps you reduce stress. And I want to really emphasize that point of reducing stress. I've been in support groups where it was just a big bitch fest, like not helpful, not reducing my stress, constantly hearing people just complain and complain and complain is very different than being in an environment where there's uplifting language used, there's encouragement used. We have to share the difficulty to get the support, absolutely. And just really being aware of that, of did I leave that meeting feeling better or did I leave it feeling worse? And that gives you an idea of, is it a group that helps you reduce your stress or not? And it's important to know the difference. And I know that the Alliance does a fantastic job of coordinating and organizing support groups and get-togethers across the state. So that could be something that you could look for if you're not already connected to that. Connect with a friend or family member. I know that a lot of the time I'll be in a situation where I'll meet someone and we'll have this thing in common where I'm like, gosh, that was really cool to relate to them. They understand that challenge or they understand that difficulty. But then in that time of stress later on, I kind of forget that that person would have been a resource. And so that might go on your plan of like, I want to make sure to remember that this, you know, if let's say you have a child with autism and ADHD and they're really struggling in school, and you've met someone in one of these support groups who has a similar experience with a kid, and you want to write that person down because maybe they're going to be a support if you are really struggling. So being in, not just connecting with a friend or family member, but connecting with someone who's, you're being intentional. It's going to be someone who's supportive. It's going to be someone who can help you in that time. Some family members are not going to be helpful. So it's not just a family member or a friend, it's someone that you really know you can rely on to help in that difficult time. Also thinking about exploring hobbies. You know, what are some things that you know you maybe don't have time to do all the time, but when you do have time, they really are very gratifying for you and they make you happy and feel content. And so maybe when you're having a difficult time, you're going to be intentional about making time for that as an activity to really help you de-stress. Being aware of your own impact on others and then connecting to community like what we have here at the Alliance. So being aware of your own impact on others. So maybe another caregiver or foster parent has said to you, you know, that they really look up to you, or you've inspired them somehow. Like just write yourself a note about that to just lift you up for those times when you're really needing an extra boost. And then the next one is physical. So these are all a little bit different. So flexibility. I know that when I've been under like significant stress and duress, I don't have the energy to exercise. That is the last thing I can do. In fact, exercise, if you're under significant stress, for some people, if you're experiencing adrenal fatigue, which is from overproduction of cortisol, exercise can actually be really harmful to your body because you're in such a state of depletion. But maybe something like stretching, doing some deep yoga poses that are just for releasing rather than building strength, that can still have that same positive effect on your body as for some people who might go run a couple miles. So it's important to really think about, what is my body needing right now? I know a lot of people will just dismiss exercise because they don't feel like they have the energy, but I want you to expand what could exercise include for you to meet whatever needs your body has. So then also just being mindful of what kind of sleep habits you're having, what can you do to adjust and change that? If you know that when you are under a lot of stress, you tend to have a hard time falling asleep, then you might write in this section, I'm going to commit to going to bed an hour earlier than usual because it's going to take you that extra time to decompress. You might write into that plan, I'm going to make a point of reading for 20 minutes before bed because I know that that makes me sleepy versus just scrolling on my phone. So be thinking about, how do I react when I'm under stress, and be real specific about what change you would need to make. Also nutrition, just eating foods that you know are going to fuel your body and make you feel better. Having good medical care when we're under a lot of stress, like I talked about before, it can have negative effects on our physical well-being. And think of expanding or creating a provider list. I recommend having a solid list of providers medical providers before you need them. So when I say expand your provider list, I mean, everyone has different health, right? But for some people that might mean like if they need an EpiPen, they make sure to have an allergist that they can get in touch with to get that prescription written if needed. And if they have a rheumatologist they have to see, but they haven't seen one in 5 years, a lot of doctors retired after COVID. Like just making sure you have that stuff in place, because when you're under significant stress and something as simple as calling to get an EpiPen refilled by your allergist and they're no longer there, that can feel super overwhelming. So just making sure you've got all of those things lined up. And then the next one is occupational. So trying to use stress management with work, having a healthy work-life balance. The United States is not built for that. We actually have the highest number of work hours put in per week of all the industrialized countries. A lot of industrialized countries have a much smaller standard full-time work hours. And so it does make it really hard to have a healthy work-life balance. Trying to not work when you're supposed to be off work. Intentionally taking time off for yourself. I know that when we are kinship care providers and foster parents, a lot of the time we take off is not for us. It's for the kids. It's an emergency that came up. It's for a court hearing. It's for case management. It's for an appointment they have. It's for an FTDM, like whatever. There's so many things they always need, right? But being really intentional about saying, okay, I'm going to build in X amount of time for myself so that you can take care of you, rather than using up all your time for the kids. Practicing mindfulness on lunch breaks, which goes along with not skipping lunch as a part of your healthy wellness wheel and wellness plan. And maybe participating in some professional development in your field if that's something that's exciting for you, which that kind of ties into the intellectual piece. But trying to bring some joy into that part of your life with your occupation, some things that kind of excite you and light you up, which leads to fulfillment, that next one. Also FMLA. FMLA also ties into the physical. So knowing what your rights are with Family Medical Leave Act, now that we have it in Washington State available for everybody, that is something that can be used if you have some emergencies with any of your kids. But FMLA can also be used intermittently. You don't have to use it all at once. You can use it 2 hours a week until you use up that full 3 months. There's a lot of flexibility with FMLA. So being aware now what your rights are with that, rather than waiting until it's an emergency and it feels overwhelming and daunting to look into something like that. Intellectual. That sounds like a complicated thing, but it really is not. Like, we as humans are really driven to explore and from early on, and driven to want to know new things. Lucina, you can get the wheel. I hope I said your name right. In the chat section, Luann she put it in there. You click on it and it should open up for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Janet said, I like how Andrea describes about just time to just have feelings. Yeah, let's see, where would I put this one? We'll get to so time to have feelings. Like, I know as a mom, sometimes I want my overwhelmed feelings to just be mine. And like, my safe place to cry is in the shower, or it's in the car when I'm parked. Like, how many parents or adults have done that, where you're just like sitting in the car after you get somewhere and you don't want to get out, So just being aware of that. Like, I know that you all can identify with that, but that awareness is that next piece, and putting it into the plan. So if when I'm in the shower, that's where I feel safe to cry. When I'm sitting in in the parking lot or in the driveway after I dropped the kids off. That's where I feel safe to cry and have all the big rage emotions or whatever. Put that in there where you feel like you can do that. So back to intellectual. So learning new things. Podcast is one way. A lot of people really enjoy learning about new things. Reading, listening to books. I have the Libby app where I can just download books from a library and listen to them or read them, whatever way I choose. That's great because it's free. Traveling doesn't have to be fancy. Just like, hey, what's a town I haven't been to? And just, taking that time to drive there and check it out and learn about it. Taking trainings of interest to you, like the one you're in right now, watching webinars, doing some journaling, processing about different things you're learning, playing games. Like there's a lot of really fun games where you can learn trivia and different things, but just that behavior of playing a game for a lot of people is intellectually stimulating for them, especially those more fast-paced ones, or even something like chess. You're really having to put a lot of thought and intent into what you're doing. And based on what the game is, that can create that practice of mindfulness and really slowing down, being very present, and focusing only on that thing you're doing, which is another reason that something as simple as a game can be helpful. And I don't want to discount like having an app, like a game on an app. For some people, there's apps that are very specific to mindfulness and calming activities. So even finding some apps that are on your phone that might be helpful in this area. I mean, you can really get very specific with how you're searching for apps now. And then potentially joining groups based on areas of interest. So for example, if you have a family pet, like a dog, and you maybe join a group where everyone gets together every Friday at 10 o'clock and you all go for a walk together. So that's that connection. That's also getting outside, that physical piece, that spiritual piece of connecting to nature potentially. So some of these really flow into each other in different areas. And then financial, so having an emergency savings, family budget that everyone is accountable to and aware of, managing and balancing your debt to income ratio, tracking your credit score. Credit Karma is a great app to use for tracking your credit score and learning how to manage your credit in a better way. This is a tough one for a lot of caregivers because you're given these kids, you're not always necessarily given the resources right away that you need. And there's a lot of stress behind not having the resources needed for everything. Or maybe you're given the resources right away, but it's still not offsetting the cost of this child. There's a lot of kids that have a lot of needs. So just trying to think through a plan for that and how to manage that stress. Oh, typo, didn't black that one out. Environmental. Hold on, I gotta move this little thing. Okay. Spending some time in nature. We already talked a little bit about that. Being mindful of your impact. So for some people, when they're under significant stress and duress, things feel out of control. And the out of control feeling perpetuates the stress and the duress. And so for some people, finding ways that they have control and then further contributing to that can actually help reduce stress. So what that might look like is, what's your impact in your community? Are you going to be intentional about recycling? Are you going to be intentional about only buying used clothing because you're reducing that footprint you're creating on this earth? Just those little things that you can really do with intention to create a sense of, I have more control than I realized. Because with some of these cases, with these kids, we don't have a lot of control. So being mindful and aware of areas you can have control can be really helpful. So when you're writing that one down, I wouldn't write being mindful of my impact. I would write something like, I have control over my carbon footprint on this earth. And maybe write a couple different ways that you want to do that. Being aware of your surroundings and how it makes you feel. Do you have a safe space in your home for your mind? So as a therapist, this is something I find to be really, really important, is that you have a space in your home where you can go to and feel safe. And when I say safe, I mean the things you're looking at, using all 5 of your senses, you feel like safe enough to just take a deep breath and just totally calm down and unwind. I don't feel safe if my bedroom, I don't mean like physically safe, I mean like calm, I guess. If I go into my bedroom and there's clothes everywhere and it's a disaster and my bed isn't made, and I don't have pictures of my kids in my bedroom. My bedroom is like my Zen zone. I keep it so that when I walk in, I feel calm. I need that escape. I need that place to go to. And so being intentional around, what does that space look like in your home for you to go to? If you feel completely dysregulated, you know you can, at least for 3 minutes, go to this place, and what you're seeing creates a sense of calm. So then that next step to that is, what does make you feel calm? Is it certain colors? Is it certain sounds? Is it certain smells? Is it certain textures? I love certain textures. I love big, bulky Afghans. I love the feeling of velvet. So that's what my comforter is. Like, everything has intention. I have a lot of plants in my bedroom because that's my sanctuary. I need it to feel calm and comforting to me. I almost want it to feel like a hug when I walk in there. And so colors, textures, sounds, smells, all of that stuff is things you can control in your environment to help you feel calmer. And that's important for every day, but you can get really specific with it when you're having a difficult time. But planning ahead now, putting that stuff in place now, is going to be a lot easier when you're under a lot of stress, because at that time it's just going to feel overwhelming. And then the last section of your wellness wheel is going to be the emotional piece. So working on emotional intelligence, really becoming familiar with more emotions and what does it feel like in your body? What's that somatic response? That the more you can get in touch with your body, the more you're going to be able to know what it needs. I don't do mental health counseling anymore. I retired last May, but when I was doing it for 17 years, one of the first questions I would ask my clients every single time is, tell me how your body feels. Do you have pain anywhere in your body? What is that pain telling you? Like, really connecting that emotion with the sensation in their bodies, because it's clues, it's cues. It gives you a lot of information. Taking more time for self-care, and we're going to get into self-care in a little bit. Learning how to manage your stress, which is part of what we're talking about today. Seek therapy if needed. So I always recommend having a therapist picked out ahead of time. When you're in that state of dysregulation, it's going to be a lot harder to think clearly about, oh, right, I have a phone number I can call with my insurance company who's going to tell me who's in network. Or, oh, right, I know that Psychology Today is a great resource to go to, which it is. I would encourage you to write that down. Psychology Today, you can put in your insurance, your gender preference. You can, when you do the filters, you can do what their areas of expertise are. Like, you can get so specific. You can do telehealth only or in-person only. But have a couple people that you feel like are a good fit for you, or at least the information of where you know to go to when you might need that support of a mental health therapist. And then another good one for this emotional section of your wheel is practicing gratitude with intention. So there's a lot of research behind the more people practice gratitude, the more resilient they are, and the more they're able to see the positive side of things than the negative. So is there anything I didn't mention that any of you would think of to add to any of these lists? There's so many more things you could add. We're just going over a couple. More than a couple, but you know. No? Okay. So then we want to look at what is the difference between self-soothing and self-care. There's a really important distinction, and they can tend to bleed in together. Oh, I'm bummed that picture looks so fuzzy. Okay. So as you can see from this pictorial, one is about calming yourself, while the other is about creating routine for long-term well-being. So self-soothing is specifically things you can do at the time of distress. It's short-term, it's right here, right now. So doing breath work, what I like to always recommend is practicing one deep breath at every red light. That's doing what we call habit stacking, where you have something that you're already doing. When we try to implement something new, you just add it on to something you're already doing to help remember to do that new thing you want to do. So if you're driving, you're always going to be coming to a red light at some point. And so if you want to practice some breath work, adding it on to the red light might be an easy way to help remember to do it. When we do breath work, it really helps calm our nervous system. It research proves and shows and demonstrates to us that it reduces our blood pressure, increases our oxygenation in our blood. It's really good for us when we're for any time. Aromatherapy and comforting smells. So those can actually be different things. So aromatherapy could be, essential oils or flowers, but also maybe the smell of cookies is comforting to you, or maybe the smell of a certain tea is comforting to you. But yeah, having smells that are going to be calming and comforting to you. Taking a bath, spending time with pets. Cooking, for some people that's helpful because it's distracting and it's something they enjoy doing. Listening to music. Some people like really loud, just push all the thoughts out of my brain music. Some people prefer more calming, relaxing music. Some people might want really upbeat music so they can dance. Exercise might be another one. Remember, there's different ways to exercise, not just the exhaustive kind. And time with friends. And then self-care is more long-term behavior changes with intention to support yourself. So some examples are having healthy sleep habits, having a healthy diet, time with friends, time in nature, and support groups. So the self-care we're really building over time. And the more, we can practice this on a day-to-day basis, the easier time we're going to have during those stressful times. We won't have to necessarily implement as much. But it's also really good to know what are some things right now I can do to take care of myself. So walking down to the beach could be a self-soothing thing because in that moment it's going to make you feel better. A lot of the things we talked about from here, this list can go under the bank of self-care or self-soothing. But I think it's important to be mindful of knowing what things you can go to right away to immediately help you start to regulate and feel better. And then also being mindful of, okay, what things long-term do I know really support me well? Another thing I want to mention too from this list is that what works one day might not work the next, and that's okay. So that's why it's important to have, I would say, at least 3 things in each section, because maybe meditation works great today, but tomorrow you just feel like I cannot slow my mind down enough. So it's going to be a lot easier for you to just have affirmations to read, or to just say, okay, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm just going to go outside. And same thing with all of these different areas, just having a pretty good list so that you can pick and choose and not feel like you only have 1 or 2 things and you don't feel like you can do either of those. I don't want you to feel like you're failing, because when we're in times of stress and duress, it can feel overwhelming and really hard to do even some basic things, especially when we are responsible for these kids who are oftentimes an incredible amount of work and output for us. So how will you know when you need to activate your wellness plan? Hopefully your body is going to tell you. If you're noticing, "Ah, gosh, I have a headache every day, my shoulders are tight every day, I have pain in my joints every day, I am waking up with, my jaw hurting because you've been clenching all night," your body is telling you it needs some extra support. Your body is telling you it needs some help. So really learning to pay attention to your body and think about what are the emotions behind how I'm feeling right now. And then if your wheel starts to feel wobbly, when these areas start to get out of sync, things are going to start to feel off. It's going to feel disconnected. Life is going to feel harder. So just have that visual of like this wobbly wheel, and then look at your wheel and say, okay, where am I having deficits? You might be really strong in certain areas, but other areas you need to do a better job of supporting yourself. And most of us function that way. Like, I think almost everyone functions that way. We do better in certain areas of support. So being mindful of things are feeling wobbly, going back to the wheel and saying, okay, where do I need to focus my energy right now? I encourage you to share your wellness plan with a partner, another person, to help hold you accountable. And then that way, hopefully they'll give you honest and caring feedback if they notice you need to increase care in some areas. So, and you can talk with your partner about what that would look like and sound like. So it doesn't feel good if someone's like, what's your problem? Why are you acting so cranky? Like, nothing can make someone crankier than someone saying, why are you so cranky? Or are you cranky? And maybe you weren't until they asked that question. So talking about how you want to receive that feedback, and then how you can work together on moving towards supporting you with your wellness plan. Excuse me. Take time to identify things that have helped or could help in each area, and then write them out, like I've been encouraging you to do as we've been talking about this. When you're having a difficult time, you can reflect on that list often and pull from areas that feel manageable to implement, which may change from day to day. And that's why I want you to have at least 3 in each section, because your needs and wants and desires are going to change day to day or week to week. The important piece is to be doing them as needed and learn to identify when they're needed. So I think it's healthy to have this out every day and be looking at like, okay, what do I need today? What is some extra area I'm needing some support? And incorporating self-care into your daily life to help reduce the impact of stressful times, because you have built resiliency into your life. So remember, self-care is that long-term stuff that you can do. And the more we have worked to implement that long-term self-care stuff, the better we can manage when those really big things come up. And if we go back to those original questions I asked right here, what constitutes a difficult time? Who gets to say? How do we measure that? There could be just a lot of things happening, a lot of little things. And then one day you're just like, I can't take it anymore. And there's nothing specific. It's just you're overwhelmed. You have burnout, and overwhelmed because it's been so long of so many things. So it doesn't have to be a significant event. What's more important is paying attention to what is your body telling you that you need. A lot of times people a lot of times the self-talk will be, there's nothing wrong. What's my problem? Get it together. Like there's no reason to feel this upset because there wasn't some big event. And in foster care, a lot of times there are really big events. And so it can be easy to tell ourselves it's not that big of a deal. Everything's fine because you know what worse looks like. But if your body is saying, I'm having a hard time, accept that, embrace it, and pull up your plan. And really honor yourself by doing that. So, if you haven't already, I would encourage you to think about who is your accountability person that you can talk to about your plans. And then where would you keep your wellness plan to help remind you to use it? So what are some ideas of where you could put this once you're done working on it? Kind of like your emergency evacuation plan you have to have posted in your house somewhere. Think of it the same way. This is your emergency plan. Bathroom mirror. I love that. You can see it every day. That's a great one. By your bed or the fridge. Those are both good. Yeah, again, places you're going to see it every day. Exactly what you want to be doing. Putting it somewhere you're going to see it often. And then my next question to you is, I know if we see something every day, we can tend to start to overlook it because we have seen it every day. So how are you going to ensure that you don't overlook it if you are having a difficult time and need to use the resources on it? That might be more of a rhetorical question, but if you could think of an idea, I would love to hear it. I'm sure others would too. Monthly check-in. I like that idea. With who, Andrea, your accountability person, or would you put on a calendar? That says set alarms on your phone to remind you. Yeah,
Probably my husband.
okay.
Like we should probably be, doing something like both of us should be doing something like this. So yeah. We're trying to do that anyways for like date night. So we have, by the way, so we have like a box and we're putting things we want to do together into the idea box. And then we have to every Monday night. So this is getting in the way, guys. Every Monday night, get into the box, see what we each put in it. And then from those ideas, we pick one thing to do together the following weekend that brings us closer and it's not about the kids.
I love this so much. That is such a great idea.
trying to keep the love alive and like
Yeah.
not let it be all about these kids,
Yeah, I love how much intention there is behind that and that you get to do it together. You're both a part of that. How long have y'all been married?
Okay, well that doesn't paint the accurate picture. Because 4 months. We've been together 4 years. We've only been married for 4 months, but we have
Okay.
had the kids for 10. And, it's taking a toll for sure.
Mhm.
So we're just trying to be proactive.
Good for you. That's awesome. Hopefully you're using respite to get that time.
We should be doing that more. Yeah.
It's a resource available to you.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and think about what you're modeling for the kids. You know, if they are seeing that you're doing this, even if they're just seeing that you're taking time for each other and you're coming back in a better mood and all these things, like you're modeling some really beautiful things, some really healthy relationship dynamics for these kids. So thinking about time with your partner, for some people, that would go here somewhere. Like, I just need time alone with my partner. That would be something that would be a stress reducer for you. So be thinking about where that might go under emotional, physical, if like, you know, intimacy is something you need to plan or would be helpful. Could be under intellectual, like having a date night to just have adult conversations, talking about things other than kids. Time alone with partner could go in a lot of areas. Any questions about how to put this together and how to implement?
Okay, I have a question. What are we doing for the next hour, like 45 minutes? What's your plan?
We got through it faster than I thought. There's usually more engagement, but we're gonna talk about it as long as you need, and then I know Luann's gonna share some resources with everybody, and she can maybe answer that question further.
So I know this isn't therapy,